Hi, everyone. Good morning. It is 9:34 a.m. on a Monday. Today is Monday, July 11th, 2022. Bitcoin is at $20,388. Ethereum is at $1,137. I believe they're both down. That's right. They're down a little bit. Bitcoin down 2.64%. Ethereum down 2.3%. And my favorite microcap token, Giddy, is down 3.6%. Come on, Giddy, you're breaking my heart. Oh, it pains me. I'm staking Giddy and I'm getting Giddy rewards, but Giddy also has been consistently dropping, and so it's like, are we even keeping up with the drop in price, Giddy token? Come on, guys, come on. Oh. Let's dive into the headlines and see what's going on lately. I have some headlines, but I also have just some broader thoughts. That's where my head operates. It's at the very, very high 30,000 foot level. In fact, I have a very difficult time when I get down to granular microeconomic stuff. Macroeconomy, big picture, is where I think I naturally operate. But let's get into it. Inflation to dominate economic chatter this week, with CPI report for June weighing on markets. The report comes in on Wednesday. The Fed will release the new CPI numbers, Consumer Price Index, letting us know what inflation is at. And this will tell us whether we are officially in a recession. My suspicion is that we are, even if they're, and this is important, even if their numbers indicate that we are not. I don't trust these institutions. They change how they report these numbers over time. If they reported them like they used to, we would almost certainly be in double-digit inflation right now. They exclude things like energy and food, which turns out you actually need, and those are core and fundamental to living in an economy. Food and energy, who would have thought? Those are very volatile, granted, but like, you can't just dismiss things that are inconvenient. If we're talking about inflation, if we're talking about how much money costs, you can't just dismiss some of the most important big variables because they're inconvenient to calculate. Have you ever heard of trueflation? I wasn't planning on talking about this. Let's look at trueflation, shall we? Twitter, trueflation. Trueflation is an independent measure of inflation, trying to derive politically unmotivated, basically politically unmotivated CPI numbers. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be a politically unmotivated independent body, but they are not. They are not politically unmotivated. They are not independent, not in any meaningful sense of the word. Come on, where's the trueflation number? The trueflation rate today is 10.46. Like I said, double-digit inflation. I believe we're already there. We probably will not see that with the CPI numbers coming out on Wednesday. They will be lower than this, but depending on whether they are higher or lower than people expect, the markets will definitely react. All right, moving on. I wasn't even planning on talking about trueflation. Twitter, Elon, the drama never stops. You know, when he started this process, a lot of people were very skeptical and dubious. Turns out a lot of people really don't like Elon. And on a personal level, I'm kind of torn. I wouldn't want to be, I don't know, a member of his family per se. The guy's been divorced and separated many times. One of his children just basically divorced him and changed their name. I remember seeing him speak in 2013 at South by Southwest from the main stage and thinking to myself, and I don't remember what prompted this, but I distinctly remember thinking to myself, he's probably a terrible father. All of that said, he's a titan of industry who's built incredible companies, and I think the world on net is probably a better place for what he has done. I was very excited about this Twitter deal where he was going to buy Twitter, but it's looking like it's not going to happen now. And it's so weird because he wanted to buy Twitter. Twitter didn't want him to buy. A lot of the people there were freaking out, absolute turmoil internally. He asked for the bot numbers. They didn't provide those or didn't provide sufficient, and so he's backed out of the deal. And so it's like, it's weird. It's like he wanted to buy, and now he doesn't want to buy, but now he's getting sued. They said I couldn't buy Twitter. Then they wouldn't disclose bot info. Now they want to force me to buy Twitter in court, and now they have to disclose bot info in court. Elon Musk is such a fascinating individual for a variety of reasons, not just that he's built these incredible companies, not just that he's brilliant and very obscenely rich, but because he does things to such an extreme extent and seems to not care what other people think at all. He truly doesn't care. At least that's how he behaves. He is not trying to impress anybody. He is just having fun on his own terms. And honestly, that's pretty admirable. I guess you can do that kind of thing when you are the richest man on planet Earth. Here's a little piece of history. We're going to get a couple fun pieces of history today. 5 years ago today, Bitcoin photobombs the Fed. When Janet Yellen was speaking, somebody put up this sign, "Buy Bitcoin." I am sure that person got fired, let go, censured, something. But was it worth it? Probably. Let's watch the clip, shall we?
To some people, it may not be, but I don't understand that. That's the reason I'm questioning you about it.
So I regard the Federal Reserve as one of the most transparent central banks in the world.
That's a statement. What do you fear about the audit? Give me
describe.
The camera cut away as soon as that guy put it up. Good for him. I thought that was so funny. 5 years ago, what do you think the price was 5 years ago? Should we look it up? Bitcoin, let's see. Bitcoin price 5 years ago. Price history. Oh, come on. Investopedia. I don't need to know what a price history is. I need to know what it was 5 years ago. Sure, CoinDesk. Let's go to all, and let's go to, let's see, 2022. So that was 2018. Whew. You know, it was it was lower than it is now. Yeah, it was substantially lower than it is now. It was in the 6,000s range 5 years ago. We are now at the 20,000s range, so over 3x, about 3x what it was. Fun piece of history right there. Also a fun piece of history is considering what the higher lows look like. Everybody looks at the all-time highs, but one way to measure the progress of Bitcoin is what are the lows. The lows keep getting higher. The trend is very clear. It's up, high, and to the right. It also seems to be a diminishing curve, which most models account for, but some of them mysteriously do not. I've seen people kind of hand wave this away, say that's not a diminishing curve. Now, this is a logarithmic scale, notably, but still important to note that like kind of tapering off on the logarithmic scale. This is the size of Bitcoin compared to everything else. Now, some of these labels, all of these labels are in Spanish, so it might not be totally clear what they are, but did you see that at the beginning? Bitcoin, 420 billion, Tesla, 700 billion, Amazon, 1.1 trillion, Google, 1.4 trillion. Do you remember when the first public company crossed $1 trillion? It was a big, big deal. It was just like 2 or 3 years ago. It was not that long ago. And now we have numerous companies past $1 trillion. I don't think that's because they're doing dramatically better. I think it's because everything has fled to these securities and assets that can act as money because our money is not great money. Everybody knows they need to put their money someplace where it can grow. In the big picture, Bitcoin is still very small, and we are still early, friends. We are still early. Moving on. Just in, another spot Bitcoin ETN, which I assume is similar to an ETF, will launch in Germany today. Still none in the United States. We're seeing this in a lot of places, but not the U.S., because Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, seems to have a vendetta against approving a Bitcoin spot ETF, and it remains a mystery to me as to why. But increasingly, he's coming under fire and pressure from numerous individuals and institutions for this resistance. So it has to break eventually. Eventually, he has to grant this. I don't know why he's holding out. Michael Saylor says that Ethereum is obviously a security. And that's true. And it seems that the SEC and Gensler agree. He has said publicly that Bitcoin is the only one that is property. Everything else appears to be a security. It's centralized. It was planned. There's a core group of people who guide its development who would stand to make a lot of money if it increased in price. This is basically like a stock. Bitcoin is not like that. Bitcoin is in development for a couple years before anybody really took it seriously as money. The founder has disappeared. Anybody can get involved. It's available in many, many different places. It's not like the rest. That said, Samson Mow, who is a Bitcoin maximalist, I got to be careful what I say. I don't know why my account was flagged the other day. But anyway, a Bitcoin hardliner, Samson Mow, said there is no second best. There are 19,999 second bests. Bitcoin is king. This seems silly to me. You're equating all of them as being basically the same, and I don't think that that's true. I think there are some that are dramatically better than others, even if Bitcoin is dramatically better than all the rest, right? There's a categorical difference between 0 and 1. There's a categorical difference between infrequently and never. And basically what Samson and all the Bitcoin maximalist mays are saying, the Bitcoin hardliners are saying that Bitcoin is 1 and everything else is 0. I just don't think that's true. I think Bitcoin is far and away the leader and nothing else comes close to it. But if you look at the rest of the field, it's not like they're all equivalent. There are some that are pretty cool. There are some that are doing impressive technical things. There are some that are doing things that could actually be useful. Monero, useful, interesting. It doesn't have the market cap that others do, but I like Monero. I think it's cool. If you're going to compare that to some micro cap garbage token, then I don't know what to tell you. They're not the same thing. But Samson and a lot of the other hardliners are saying that they're all basically equivalent. They're all second best. This is a clip of Andreas Antonopoulos. If you're not familiar with Andreas, he is a Bitcoin OG. This guy has been educating people on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency for many years, longer than virtually anybody else. Now, listen to what he says here about why proof of work is important. This is why the Bitcoin hardliners, the Bitcoin core people, are so adamant about the centrality and importance of proof of work. It's what makes Bitcoin independent. Right? If Bitcoin, this is never going to happen. I'm not even sure it would be feasible in any sense of the word, technologically or politically or otherwise. But if Bitcoin went to proof of stake, it would lose this quality. Listen.
About a large nation state that has interest in just actively destroying Bitcoin to make their own, super rigs and design chips and just throw hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to intentionally disrupt the blockchain.
Yeah, I don't worry about that at all. This cannot be done with Bitcoin anymore. This is something that can only be done with nascent altcoins. Bitcoin has achieved a level of computing that no single nation state can overthrow it through computation alone. The effort to do so would require a massive covert operation of chip fabrication, then the coordinated assault that would give them dominance over the next block for 10 minutes until we kick those bastards off the network, rework the protocol around them. They would be revealed. They would have lost $1 billion doing this, and all they got to do was one double spend. Now, here's the thing. Long before we get to that point, they figure out that if they just let this stuff run, they can actually get some Bitcoin as a reward because the incentive structure actually works. And so I'm not worried about that. And a lot of people are watching the blockchain. And as I said before, what are they going to do? So they take over and they fork the blockchain and they go somewhere, right? They've created an alternative blockchain. Great. What are we going to do? Who's going to join the NSA blockchain? Anybody want to jump on FedCoin? So we're all going to stay on the old fork. Difficulty will go down. It will get more profitable for the miners who stayed behind, and we'll carry on with our coin, and they can go mine whatever the hell they want on their alternative blockchain.
I love that. And here, there are a few things worth noting about this. One, There is some evidence to suggest that there have already been attacks in Bitcoin's history on the blockchain trying to 51% attack it, and they have failed. They look like coordinated attacks, and they didn't accomplish anything. Two, what he's talking about, Fed coin or NSA coin, that was a joke when he said it. It is not a joke now. What he's describing are basically CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. You might as well call that Fed coin because that's exactly what it is. How many people are going to be eager to use Fed coin? Not a lot. It's surveillance money, and it's not even really money. It's a coupon that you're allowed to use by their terms when they let you, in the way that they let you. Right? It's money from mom and dad, from the nanny state, that they actually control even after they give it to you. They control when you spend it, how you spend it, where you spend it. They control how much you're allowed to spend in certain regions. Why would anyone want to use that? The only reason people will use that is if they are jurisdictionally mandated, if they legally are forced to, or they're utterly ignorant. There's no reason somebody should want to use CBDCs. The only one who benefit from CBDCs are the central banks. That's it. It doesn't do you any good. You gain nothing from using FedCoin, which was a joke when Andreas said this. When did he say this? 2014. This was from a conference, March 6th through 7th, 2014. So in 2014, Andreas Antonopoulos was saying that the Bitcoin network could not be attacked by a sovereign nation government, not even the United States, not even a coordination of sovereign governments. And how far have we come since 2014? The hash rate just keeps hitting new all-time highs. Like I said, Bitcoin is basically unkillable at this point. There is not an attack vector in a conventional sense that I can think of that could bring down the network. There are political machinations that could compromise the integrity of the Bitcoin network, but that all depends on user behavior. The way this could be undermined is if we centralize the coins, right? The network is decentralized, but if they're held largely in third-party custody on exchanges, that's not a good thing. Well, guess what? The failure of UST and Celsius and Voyager and Vald, I almost said Vought. I've been watching The Boys, can you tell? Vald, all of these failures, this catastrophe, this domino effect, this contagion, as Scott Melker calls it, they have caused a whole bunch of people to withdraw, if they still can, to personal custody. The sale of hardware wallets is now at an all-time high, and people are realizing that they desperately need to educate themselves and hold in personal self-custody. Otherwise, their coins are at risk. So it doesn't look like centralization on third-party exchanges is going to be a huge trend in the future. How about centralization of mining? Well, a couple of years ago, there was a huge trend. There was an overwhelming amount of the mining network that was in China. Oh no, this is actually kind of a threat to the Bitcoin mining system. And then China banned them. So anytime this network starts to centralize, it's happened a couple times in recent history, it starts to centralize in some fashion, something happens, something breaks, and it disperses. This is the nature of a decentralized network. If you attack it in one area, it just spreads out. There is no head to cut off on this thing. It is spread out all over the place. It is the most secure decentralized network on the planet, certainly more than every other cryptocurrency, but also more than just about anything else on Earth. Compare it to whatever you want. It is decentralized and secure in a fashion that is incomparable to other networks. Okay, this from Dennis Porter, an influencer in the Bitcoin world, CEO and co-founder at Satoshi Act Fund. He said, Bitcoin mining will decentralize energy. And I believe that, and I hope for that to be true, but it is only true if miners and the Bitcoin world at large build in that direction, build with that as a guiding star. I have had friends, people that I like and respect and trust, who are not on the same page with me about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency broadly, send me articles and stuff saying like, well, what about this? They reopened this coal mine in South Dakota, and now it's just mining Bitcoin, and that's all it's doing, and it's killing the atmosphere, and it's ruining the economy there. They're citing these examples of Bitcoin being bad for the environment. People care about this. People really think that this is a serious problem. Now, whether it is actually a problem depends upon a couple things. It depends on your view of the macro environment, right? The globe at large, and how much this is actually contributing to climate change and emissions and that kind of thing. But also, it depends on how the network is built moving forward. Because it doesn't have to be burning coal in a plant that was shut down. We can discuss the virtues or vices of fossil fuels, and I'm actually very curious to read more about that. There are pros and cons that people discuss, and there are going to be people out there who think I'm crazy for saying that there are pros and cons. There absolutely are. The EU recently, maybe Germany, moved to shut down more nuclear power plants, saying that nuclear was not environmentally acceptable, but they have to turn on coal plants in order to keep the lights on, literally. This is insane. This is bonkers. Nuclear is greener, is cleaner, is safer, is better than virtually anything else. And in fact, we've theorized about thorium reactors that are nuclear but fundamentally built in a different way, that are safer and can be smaller and can be built all over the place. And I don't know why we're not doing that. Truly, I don't. My best guess is the regulatory environment won't allow for it. There is not a regulatory environment built for a novel nuclear reactor, sadly. But this can be done. This is something that can happen right now. In fact, this is a photo of it happening right now. This is Bitcoin miners being used to heat a facility that is growing flowers. Could be used to grow crops, could be used to grow anything. This is a better way to do this, right? The optics are great. The function is phenomenal. I want to see more of this. This looks great. This is something that people can't fight against. There's no reason to be upset about that. Especially if it's with renewable energy, and that's totally doable. Again, from Dennis Porter, last time Bitcoin crashed, my normie friends called it a scam. This time when Bitcoin crashed, my normie friends called it cheap and asked me how to buy. Bullish. He's right. At this point, nobody's saying that Bitcoin is dead. Nobody really believes that it can die anymore. When people are talking about a crash, they're talking about the price. It's pretty dumb and ignorant at this point to say that Bitcoin's going to die. Sorry, people have been saying that for the entire duration that Bitcoin has been online. Bitcoin is dead. Bitcoin is dead. You're familiar with the Bitcoin obituaries, right? From 99 Bitcoins. This is a catalog of all the times that Bitcoin has been declared dead by some press outlet, some blog post. Let's look for it. Bitcoin obituaries. Thank you, 99 Bitcoins. This is truly a public service. Bitcoin has died, big air quotes, died 459 times. And this is spanning the last, this is not very much, last couple months. Oh, that's the price. That's the price action. But you scroll down, and these are all the headlines from when people have said that Bitcoin is dead. I don't think people are doing this anymore. I think this number, the obituaries, are going to decline. Because it's just ignorance at this point. You're going to sound stupid. Most people are going to correctly disagree with you if you say Bitcoin is dead. You can point out weaknesses or disagreements or failures. The Bitcoin is dead is part of the process where somebody, what is it Gandhi said? First they laugh at you. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you. Oh, it isn't Gandhi's, whatever. I don't care who said it. It is an apropos quote. Some website is saying it's not Gandhi. I don't care. I want to look at the contents of the quote. Oh my gosh, I hate you, Pinterest. Go away. Whoa! How do I even close this? I'm going to just go back to what I was doing because Pinterest is the devil. Anyway, the greening of the Bitcoin mining network, an essential development, a guiding star that I think we need to work toward. Nobody's calling Bitcoin dead anymore. They are doing this bit, the Wojak crying that they don't like it. They have objections to it. High Priest of Bitcoin Max Kaiser is tweeting here. He's absolutely a maxi and probably a toxic maxi, but he has also done a lot of good in spreading the gospel of Bitcoin. These are some of the oft-cited objections to Bitcoin. And you know what? I'm looking around at what people are talking about right now, and with the price action moving sideways and the market down and the macroeconomic picture looking way more important than Bitcoin's internal developments relative to the price, right? Like, what's moving the price? Well, lately it's been kind of moving sideways, and what's really moving it around are macroeconomic pictures. It's been this contagion issue for the past couple months, but it's looking like we are hoping that we are basically at the end of the contagion, right? Where else can it spread to? Almost all of the centralized lenders have toppled. So I don't know where else that goes. I think we are at the bottom of the contagion. Whether we're at the bottom of the price now depends on the macroeconomic picture. So that's why people are looking at things like CPI and the inflation numbers and other things like that. But here are the objections that you commonly hear to Bitcoin. It's not backed by anything. It's a wall of encryption, encrypted energy, and cyber hornets. Cyber hornets. What does that mean? Does anybody know what cyber hornets are? You want to clue me in down below? What is a cyber hornet? Not the first time I've seen that phrase. I'm going to have to go look for it later. It's too volatile, says the Wojak. Equities have been more volatile this year, especially given Bitcoin's size. It uses too much energy. Legacy finance uses orders of magnitude more. This is something that has always baffled me. People say Bitcoin uses too much energy. Like, how much energy do you think Visa uses? The conventional finance system. All of it, not just a swipe of the card, right? You have to look at all of it, all of finance. How much is that using? Okay, can Bitcoin scale in a way where it does all of that more efficiently, more equitably? I think it can. It's not controlled by anyone. That's exactly why it works and what makes it better than a legacy network. Governments will ban it. Geographic arbitrage. We've already seen this. Governments try to ban it. It just moves elsewhere. It's a global internet. It's decentralized. You can't ban Bitcoin from your country. You can ban your country from Bitcoin. It's very different. Go ahead and take the North Korea route. Ban people from engaging in the open market. See how well it works out for you. About the same as it worked out for North Korea. Quantum computers. Nuclear launch codes and NASDAQ will go down before Bitcoin. This is true. If the encryption securing Bitcoin gets broken by quantum computers, then everything is broken. Banking is broken. Military secrets are broken. Everything gets broken. And we've got a much bigger problem on our hands besides Bitcoin is theoretically broken. Gold is better. 5,000 years. Gold is only relatively scarce. Bitcoin is absolutely scarce. Also more durable, divisible, portable, and recognizable. Fully agreed. I actually bought some gold over the weekend just for fun. I bought gold backs. Are you familiar with these? These are notes similar to a paper dollar that have gold infused in them. I was at the farmer's market. A guy had some gold backs and was selling them. I figured, why not? So I've got a handful of gold backs. Those are fun. But I don't really think of gold backs as the future of money. They're a throwback. They're an interesting affect. Gold is not the future of money. It's the history of money. You don't want to go back to the past. You want to take the best of the past and move forward into something even better. Criminals use Bitcoin. It's not anonymous. It's a public ledger, and this is true. And I actually change my mind. I think this is a positive thing. The fact that it's a public ledger and it can be analyzed, and if a sufficiently motivated party wants to know what's going on, they can do some chain analysis and gather information. Whew, is this anathema to so many of my watchers or Bitcoin hardliners? Chain analysis is an interesting topic, one we could get into more on another day. I don't think it's entirely a bad thing, right? It's information that is useful in a lot of ways, even to law enforcement. Moving on, I'm still parsing through how I think about all of that. But the fact that Bitcoin can be parsed, the chain can be analyzed for information, for a variety of purposes, if you have a sufficiently motivated body with sufficient resources to dig in, I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. And on the flip side, if you have a sufficiently motivated party who wants to obscure their transactions, they can also do that. Back and forth, a cat and mouse game. That's how law enforcement typically works. It's not anonymous. It was never anonymous. It's a public ledger. It's pseudonymous, right? Okay, moving on. Thank you, Wojak and Michael Saylor. From Bitcoin Magazine, new protests escalate in China as millions can't withdraw money from their bank accounts since April. China needs Bitcoin. This is true. China needs Bitcoin just like China needs freedom. It's not to say that they're going to get it anytime soon. Banks across China are halting withdrawals. Now, I don't exactly know why this is going on. I just know that it is increased instability. And what's interesting here is China is built to deal with exactly this kind of protest. So my suspicion is that the crackdowns will be very harsh if this continues. That said, I don't know. I don't know how you hold back a nation of angry people who don't want to be oppressed like this if they are sufficiently determined to overthrow their oppressors. I don't know. And it's happening all over the place. A massive protest in China over frozen bank deposits was broken violently by anonymous men in white shirts. The dynamics of power there mean more beatings could ensue, almost certainly will. The government only responds after we protest. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Large Chinese bank protest put down with violence. This is what the state does. This is what sets the state apart from other entities. It is not the Elks Lodge. It is not the Shriners. The government is not a friend of yours. It is a mob hired to keep the other mobs at bay. It is the Leviathan so big that nobody else will challenge it. And why? Why is that important? Because they can put down insurrections. They can put down other mobsters. It is an unquestioned authority because it's so big and, frankly, mean and violent. And when you have that hanging over your head, when the threat of violence is there, people typically behave themselves. Good and bad. It's the best bad solution we can find so far. We'll get more into that in just a minute. This is just, all I'm doing here in this sequence of tweets is looking at the growing instability in a lot of different places, right? We had a lot of instability in 2020 and 2021, and it would be nice to think that that was past us, that was behind us. I don't really think it is. Truckers are getting their bank accounts frozen. Chinese are getting their bank accounts frozen. Peter Schiff is getting his bank frozen. Lol. Bitcoin may be volatile, but with the right custody strategy, no one can ever take it from you. Be your own bank. This is the core idea of Bitcoin, that independent of price, you control your money. Nobody can take it from you. So if you hold it in self-custody, it is yours, really and truly. In Albania, people are protesting, we will say, not rioting. This looks like a peaceful protest, demanding the government resign. Food prices in Albania increased by double-digit % since a month ago. Inflation is not transitory. This from Gabor Gurbax, founder at Pointsville app, director at Van Eck. But look at that. Huge protest in Albania. And protests stormed the presidential palace in Sri Lanka after the country suffers extreme inflation and economic collapse. This video is wild. Let's go back and watch it from the beginning. Going to turn off the volume. You know, this is 1 million people storming the presidential palace. Governments must be terrified right now. All over the place. They have to be terrified. No place looks safe and stable and fine. Right? The former prime minister of Japan assassinated last week. The government of Great Britain resigned last week. We've got the former president of the United States being investigated by the January 6th committee, and the current president of the United States, basically people like trying to close their eyes and not look at what he's doing because it's so embarrassing. Nothing looks safe. Nothing looks stable. Where can you go to escape the madness? Well, since there is nowhere to go, you have to make somewhere. You have to build a new state, a network state, if you will. Balaji Srinivasan's book came out July 4th. I have been reading it. It is called The Network State. What is a network state? His book is interesting because he doesn't withhold anything. It's not told like a story. It's not drawn out over the entire book. He gives the entire thing right up front in one sentence, one paragraph, and 1,000 words. He spells it out very clearly. What is a network state? Briefly, it's a new kind of online community that crowdfunds land around the world, networks it together, and eventually attains diplomatic recognition. Here's what it looks like to go from a one-person startup society to a million-person network state. I've been really enjoying his book. I want to read more. As it turns out, I have totally lost the habit of sitting down in a quiet room and reading a book quietly. I got 3 kids at home. It's chaos at my house. Literally, it feels like I am the warden of a asylum trying to keep peace in the place. My kids are running around. They're screaming. There isn't really anywhere for me to go or time for me to go read a book quietly. It's only after they're in bed that I can quietly sit down and read, and usually I'm pretty tired by that point anyway. But I am trying to get through this, and I do want to give you a full review. What is a lot easier for me is listening to interviews with Balaji, and I've listened to just about every interview I can find. I agree with this, and I not only agree with what Balaji is saying, the reason I keep bringing him up, the reason I keep bringing this up is because I think it's actually really important. We've seen the instability out there in the world right now, and it is not going away. Riots, incompetent governments. Where do you go? Where do you find peace and your people? I think you have to build it. And I'm extremely curious to know who's going to take up the banner here, right? Balaji Srinivasan has basically laid down a how-to manual on building the network state, a new kind of nation. So, who's going to do it? Who out there is doing this? Because this could play out over the next 10 years. 10 years from now, in 2032, you could have basically a network state seeking diplomatic recognition and have sufficient support and financial means to buy large bodies of land and to start migrating their people there. That doesn't seem infeasible to me at all. Why? Well, look at what's happened over the last 10 years. Cryptocurrency has emerged from basically a magic internet money joke that people were not paying attention to this huge force in the world as things have gotten worse all over the place. A lot can change in 10 years. A lot. I think this is going to happen. I think this needs to happen. I absolutely want to be part of it. I just got to figure out who's doing it, how they're doing it, which tribe do I want to start or be a part of. A lot of tantalizing possibilities here. Moving on. Are you familiar with Vinay Gupta? Vinay Gupta is, among other things, the founder and CEO at Materium, which is tokenizing real-world assets. He is also something of a humanitarian. He did a project called, Hexayurt, which is a emergency shelter to be used in disaster zones. That's his banner right there. Those are Hexayurts. Vinay Gupta is another one of these brilliant people that is thinking kind of on the same topics that Balaji is. And frankly, I'm not going to include myself in the same class of genius, but topically I'm interested in the same things. Even if these guys are more technically capable and richer, deeper thinkers on the topic, this is the same stuff that's sucking me in that I can't stop thinking about. And you know who else is interesting? Oh, this is an interview he did on a podcast called Zion 2.0. This is not new. He did it like 2 years ago, but it was a fascinating podcast. And he talks about, in this podcast, tribes. He talks about, for lack of a better word, cults, but not pejorative. Cults as in groups of people who share common values and work together toward a common future, right? We use the word cult as this derogatory epithet, but I'll be honest, and this is my counterintuitive insight, take it for what you will. I don't think the world needs fewer cults. I think it needs better cults, right? That's what a network state starts as. It starts as a cult, a group of people who share a common set of values and are working toward a common future. I, in a past life, was a documentary filmmaker. I love documentary films. I try to go to Sundance every year. It's very close to where I live. I try to go to the Sundance Film Festival. I almost always end up watching documentary films. And wouldn't you know it, a lot of the best documentary films are about what you could basically deem a cult. And actually, there's a fairly standard formula for this. You find some historical cult that has living members still. You make sure that they have archival footage, and you get access to that footage. You interview their living members, and you chronicle the story. Almost always there's a charismatic leader who started things, and then something catastrophic happened that derailed the whole project. And there's historical archive footage and other records that show the narrative. I'm thinking of Wild Wild Country. I'm thinking of Spaceship Earth. But also there are plenty of examples of this that are really ugly. Like, what's the one on Netflix right now? Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, about the FLDS leader, Warren Jeffs. Obviously, this can get really ugly and go off the rails and be horrendous. But an interesting thing when you look at these documentaries about many of these, what you might deem cults that quote unquote failed, or utopian projects that failed. Think of Wild Wild Country. If you haven't seen that, it's one of the better examples. This was a group of Eastern mystics who took up residence in Oregon in the 80s and tried to build basically a utopian city there. The people that they interviewed today about their experience 30 years ago, those people are clearly nostalgic for their time there, right? They don't harbor bitter, angry, ugly feelings about it. You can tell they wish they were back there. They were of one heart and one mind. They were with people who shared common values. They were building something meaningful together. People want that. We live in an incredibly disconnected world where people lack that social connection, that richness of having brothers and sisters and companions all around you. You live in an apartment complex and you don't know any of your neighbors. You walk down the street and there are crazy people with whom you have virtually nothing in common. This is modern life, and it's depressing. The network state proposes something different. Vinay Gupta, in this podcast that you see on my screen, suggested something quite different. Here's another one. Deep Prasad is an AI researcher, quantum computing guy. And on July 4th, I don't have it in front of me, he tweeted something about the ages of the founding fathers of the United States. Guess what? Those guys weren't very old. They're in their 20s and 30s. He's basically saying, and I believe this is what Deep Prasad said in that tweet. He said, still time to start your own country. He may have meant it tongue-in-cheek. I think that's real. That's absolutely real. We need young, energetic, charismatic, thoughtful, considerate, capable people teaming up and starting network states, formalizing their tribes, catalyzing energy toward a brighter future with a clear vision on what that future looks like. Because the political class, the political apparatus in the world today totally lacks that vision. What vision of the future does the Biden administration have? They spend all of their time evading responsibility. They're not pointing to a future. Joseph Biden is 79 years old. The guy's not going to be around for much longer, regardless of the power that he currently holds. Who's going to hold the future? Young people. Who needs to build a vision for the future? Young people. And while we're talking about tribes, have you noticed how many brilliant, capable technologists and leaders are Indian by nationality, by descent? It's a lot. It's a lot. It's the three people that I just mentioned, right? Deep Prasad, Vinay Gupta, Balaji Srinivasan. It's also the CEO of Google, the CEO of Microsoft, the CEO of Adobe, the CEO of IBM. Like, if there is a nationality to be bullish on, it's Indians, man. These people are unstoppable. Parag, right? Regardless of what you think of Twitter, Parag, to get that CTO, CEO role, once CTO, now CEO, he has to be a very capable guy. Just so many. Basically, these people are running Silicon Valley. And you have Twitter's own human fortune cookie himself, Naval Ravikant, born in New Delhi, India. That's just something I've noticed. Indian nationals, brilliant, capable, accomplished people. they're a force to be reckoned with. So good job, Indian people. I'm incredibly impressed. If I could press a button and had to like pick another nativity, I probably would end up like if I could pick one, I'd probably pick Indian as a nationality. All right, that's what I got today, team. Weird note to end on, but there you have it. The macroeconomic picture is really what people are paying attention to right now. And we'll see what happens on Wednesday. Regardless, we will more than likely be down in price for a while. And now is the time to accumulate. It's what I'm trying to do. I'm buying when I can. It's not like I have huge, massive income from some side business that I haven't told you about. But when I have cash, I'm putting it into Bitcoin. All right, team. That's what I got. We'll talk again soon. Bye.